This video is my reaction to the Lions' 34-10 victory over the Cleveland Browns. One that I think they kind of made tougher than it needed to be, but in the second half, huge special teams play from Khalif Raymond and add the final touchdown to St. Brown. That's obviously the nail in the coffin. The Browns' defense deserves credit, right? We know that they play exceptionally well when their aiming point is the same, meaning it's a run concept, a direct handoff to the running back, or a play action pass or straight drop back from the quarterback. I do think that there's some level of arrogance that has to be discussed by the Lions coaching staff. And I know that you guys didn't tune in necessarily to hear this, but hopefully at this point you recognize I'm going to tell you what I think. And watching the game, I saw poor decision-making, particularly that 4th and 2 play to go for it instead of just taking the points that were essentially handed to you. And then in addition to that, to me, there was just so many times where Morton was just content to run the same concept over and over again from a run standpoint that wasn't producing anything. Montgomery was kind of phased out, even though statistically he did end up with, I think, 9 carries for 12 yards. You do have to give some credit to Kelvin Shepard's defense holding the Browns down, right? Although that is one of the worst offenses in the league to me. I just cannot get over how no one in the Browns organization or hierarchy is questioning why do we continue to put a quarterback out there who's not playing well. The Browns came into the game with a 38 TOR rating in terms of the offensive efficiency ranking that myself and some others have put together, and they didn't exceed that or even match it today. I do have to discuss the 4th down decision by Dan Campbell in a moment, but that punt return from Raymond came at the right time, right? It's only 20-10 at that moment. The defense has 2 DBs out, Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed. And then Raymond takes the punt back to the house. Beautiful work up the right sideline, then bringing it back in the middle of the field. I feel so bad a couple of weeks ago for calling him Reynolds multiple times in a video, stuck on Josh Reynolds or Craig Reynolds. But in any case, a great moment because it really put things out of reach. Made it 27-10. They added the additional touchdown later to St. Brown. It came at the right time because you didn't want, I don't think, the DBs that you had to put on the field to have to compete against Flacco, who's willing to throw the football down the field. I thought he played pretty bad. Once again, his stats, I think, reflect the quality of his play, 16 of 34. And that's why I think it's a really poor decision by Campbell. I'm going to lead and talk about that. When you are given 3 points that you didn't earn, you take it. And what I mean by that is Cleveland misses the field goal late in the third quarter, the long field goal. I think it's like 54 yards, something like that. Detroit gets the ball on the -46, so 4 yards short of midfield. They get down, and they've got a 4th and 2. To me, I thought it was elementary. Kick the field goal, go up 13. Don't give me any of that shit where, okay, you'd only be up by 13 points and 2 touchdowns beat you. There's 14 and a half minutes left in the game. Use some how far do we go back before there's some common sense applied here? Meaning, if it's late second quarter or early third, do you say, well, we're going to go for it because if we kick a field goal, 2 touchdowns beats us? What the hell are we talking about? They gave you points. It's a tough defense. You weren't generating long drives. It's a tough defense that you're facing. Take the points, Dan. It doesn't make sense to me. I've been pretty supportive, I would say, the majority of the time when he's made these decisions. This one, I think, was really poor and demonstrated a level of arrogance, but it worked out, right? And I get it. Also, Campbell's probably going to say in a press conference right at the time that I'm recording this, we trust our defense. Nonetheless, I can't support it with that much time left in the game when you're facing a really horrible offense that's not able to score points and a defense that can force turnovers, meaning the Browns defense. You're welcome to let me know if I'm focusing on it too much. I just think this team is too good for decisions like that against the better teams, of which the Cleveland Browns are not, to possibly come back to haunt you. It's about as high a level as arrogance to me as I've seen, and I get to watch a John Harbaugh coach team on a weekly basis, all right? If there's 3 or 5 minutes left, okay, fine, or maybe 7, but not 14 or 14 and a half minutes. You take the points that you didn't necessarily earn. I think there was 1 long completion to Laporta on that drive. Perhaps I'm misconstruing the drives. It really didn't matter, right? Because 5 plays later, Raymond is waltzing into the end zone. I think a 65-yard punt return for a touchdown. I didn't think Goff played particularly well. He wasn't sacked once, but there was times where he's under pressure, right? I'm discussing or focusing on the plays where he was able to move around the pocket. Cleveland brought a 4-man rush often. And sometimes they played a little bit more zone than I think Goff expected. So credit to Schwartz and them for maybe going away from their MO more than we would have expected. You really don't know until the All-22 comes out. So I could be drastically wrong, but to me it looked like Goff was getting back there and his first read wasn't there. And, he moved around in the pocket well. 4 or 5 times Goff was able to navigate the pocket, step up or shift to the right or left, and basically create enough space to throw the football. He does have the third down pass to Williams where he did what I just described, kind of moved out to the right with Garrett bearing down on him from the left side, his backside, and he hits Jamison Williams in the hands. That ball's got to be caught, clearly. But the interception to Ward was really poor. It seemed like a mental forfeiture to me. Sometimes it's man, and Ward would be following. I think it's St. Brown or maybe Raymond on like a deeper in cut. But he being Goff, he actually threw a ball in the defender's hand with about 5 minutes left down there inside the 10. That one was really surprising for me. If you recall, it's when the lines are called for a penalty. They called it on Radledge. So I guess maybe Sewell is considered off the line and the X or tight end receiver to the boundary. Really weird play call or penalty by the ref to be called. Goff slides out to his right. He's trying to find Jamison Williams, and he literally throws it right into a defender's hands. At this point, you guys should know what I think of Goff. I just spent a 30-minute video last week praising how well he played against the Ravens, and that's why I'm being a little harsh here. I didn't think he threw the ball well when he was able to move in the pocket, even though he had compressed time in those moments, right? You got to get rid of the ball quick with DNs possibly circling. I thought 4 or 5 times today there was poor throw, just not his finest performance on the throws that were available to him. But look, silver lining, not sacked once in a day. Goff finishes, I think, 16 of 28 passing, or 16 of 27. There it is on the screen right there. You still put up 34 points. You get the punt return from Raven. That makes it anticlimactic. That was a badass moment after the offense was really shut down in the third quarter. I think they ran the first 2 possessions in the third quarter. Detroit ran 7 snaps or 7 offensive plays and generated 8 yards. From a Raymond standpoint, to talk about him for a moment, he's blocking really well as well. In addition, and had 2 catches today. I thought that were both out in the right flats off of motion, so really the same look. But he was fantastic last week blocking. He's going up against Kyle Hamilton multiple times last week, making the blocks. Bigger guys than him, and he's showing that he wants to make plays. And in this case, he did. Apparently, Dan Campbell, had talked about the fact that they thought there was one coming, and sure enough, it popped at just the right time today to put the game out of reach when you had 2 of your starting corners, Arnold and Reed, out at that point. How does that fit for next week against the Bengals? I don't know, but the defense played spectacular. Aiden Hutchinson had 2 sacks. I think a third sack is wiped out by penalty. At least 1 forced fumble. It's a penalty on Branch. I think is a hold on Fanning over the middle on a third down. Hutchinson, I think, finishes with 5 or 6 quarterback hits. No idea how many pressures they gave him. Last week they gave him 8, and I didn't see that. So, I have no idea. You're welcome to let me know if someone somehow has those stats available already. But an insane game from Hutchinson. Very similar to early 2024 stuff where he's just totally dominant. And almost more so as the game went on. And I want to compare him and Garrett in that way. Garrett is one, and you can ask the guys that are in the Lions Discord, I've talked about, you've got to make Garrett get to the 8th, 9th, 10th round, to use a boxing analogy. Superb player, Hall of Fame level talent, Garrett, destructive force at times. But less so as the game goes on sometimes. You'll see he pulls himself out of the games or they take him out. Is a huge engine there to drive that truck, if you will, from the standpoint of Garrett. Hutchinson, on the other hand, his trajectory was up as the game continued. And so I think there's something to be said there. The Browns defense did what they do when, what everybody expects them to do, right? They're labeled as the best defense in the league. I'm telling you right now, I don't have the same opinion, even though we play them twice a year. And here's what I mean. When their aiming point is the same, it's either a direct handoff to the running back or a play action pass with a quarterback in the pocket or straight drop back. They're a great defense. You have to change the aiming point. Now, whether that means option stuff, whether it means jet sweep or jet reverse or some kind of jet and dive in the opposite direction. Look at the biggest run by Gibbs from today. It's a pin pull sweep into the boundary. It's a great job by Laporta, Decker getting out in front. I think Raymond actually blocks the frontside inside linebacker Bush, but Morton did that very rarely. On the day, I think Detroit's offense only averaged 4.9 yards per play, well below their standards, but they only committed 1 turnover, and that's critical. as negative as I am in some ways about the decision by Campbell and then some of the play calling by Morton, I also think it's because Morton and Campbell understood that to win this game, they just needed to avoid turnovers. That was critical. The Browns game plan globally is always create as many possessions as possible and rely on, one or two turnovers with their high-pressure defensive line, their high-pressure style. It's one high structure, almost always man-free. I think they play a little bit more zone today, but, we'll find out when the film comes out early Monday morning. Garrett was definitely a factor, but I thought Hutchinson matched it on this day. And then in terms of production and impact, Hutchinson was trajecting up, and Garrett kind of flatlined at a certain point. But, having said that, Goff still only finished 16 of 27 for 168. He did have the 2 touchdowns to St. Brown, who I believe was 6 catches on 6 targets, or there it is, 7 catches on 7 targets. Gibbs had 2 nice runs. Overall, the run game, I think 29 carries for 109, 25 carries for 100 yards before the final 2 minutes was left. Montgomery was really uninvolved. I kind of don't understand that. Everything seemed to be really downhill, kind of right at them. And I'm just not an advocate for that against the Browns. I feel like you've got to run outside zone stuff wide to one side with the quarterback possibly booting opposite, and even a split zone look by the tight end. I just didn't see as much horizontal conflict created. Basically, it could be a run play to one side or a pass to the other. I think that's important against this Browns defense with their style and what Schwartz wants them to do. When their aiming point is stationary, when they pretty much know the pocket that everything's going to occur in, they are, yes, a dominant force. That changes significantly when they go up against teams like the Browns, teams like the 49ers, who are willing to change the aiming point. I'm not talking about sprint out and stuff like that, but play action boot concepts with perhaps a sweep play tagged on top of it. In any case, I really love the final touchdown to St. Brown. I believe it's a 3rd down. It shouldn't surprise us, right? Another 3rd down touchdown to St. Brown out in the right flats. Very similar to last week against the Ravens. The big 4th and 2 catch with 2 minutes left to the right side to beat Marlon Humphrey. The touchdown on the fade to beat Marlon Humphrey earlier in the game was to the right. So I like that Sewell ended up in front. Goff, if you recall, it's the plays sniper. I think he said it twice, and then snaps the ball. Like literally one beat later, St. Brown outside. I think the Browns win will age poorly. And I'm willing to say that. I recognize that others are going to have a different opinion. They're a very limited football team. If you can avoid turnovers, that is, and then you can withstand their D-line barrage, it seems to be a dynamic that's happened in multiple seasons here recently, in that Cleveland starts off the year with an overwhelming defense that everybody proclaims as the number 1 defense in the league. But as the season goes on, for whatever reason, you can say it's quarterbacks not being healthy, whatever you want to call it. The fact is they don't maintain that same prestige once we get to and then into the playoffs. From a Cleveland standpoint, and I'm obviously very anti-Cleveland being a Ravens fan, but I will say this: it makes me wonder about what Stefanski can and is willing to teach, because to rely so clearly on Flacco, who is going to turn the football over. At this point, that's what Flacco is going to do. In stressful situations, yeah, he will throw the ball downfield. Actually, I like that about him from the standpoint of he's willing to throw the ball and let playmakers make plays. He could have had 2 other interceptions today. I think both of them were a meek to the right side on a ball that Flacco maybe threw high to Fanning, and then on one down the sideline to the left side, Meek keeps competing, and the receiver for the Browns does not. I think it's Bond. Flacco had that kind of like 1,000-yard stare on his face afterwards. Like, you could have thrown 4 interceptions today or even more. I get it. Flacco's been good for their franchise. In 2023, they made the playoffs. He had a fantastic run that year. I'm a fan of Flacco. You should know that. I'm a Ravens fan for years, and his run in Baltimore to the Super Bowl and even after that was borderline historic. There's been really no other teams that went into New England and beat the Patriots during Tom Brady's run. But at this point, that's not the guy you're getting. If you as a head coach can't teach some other quarterback to reach that level of efficiency without turning the football over, then maybe you're the problem. Continuing to put Flacco out there with 2 rookie quarterbacks in a season that's so obviously not going anywhere, to me, It's almost like Stefanski just wants to repeat 2023. The only difference is you've got diminishing results here. The ceiling isn't the same for Cleveland. So simultaneously, when their defense is really, really great early in the game, and then as you move into the third and fourth quarter, if you're able to kind of force them to different aiming points, basically change the timing and or the aiming point for the defense, I think they have reduced efficiency and reduced impact. And you kind of saw that today, even though, it did take a punt return for Raymond to get a touchdown, and then a short field where St. Brown gets a touchdown on a third down. Detroit didn't need to win the game. I really have to wonder if the issue with all these quarterbacks being cycled through in Cleveland isn't all those separate quarterbacks, and instead it's just the guy running the system and the way he manages it. Talk about the first half where Detroit took a 20-7 lead on that really amazing, booming, curling 58-yard field goal from Bates. You did have a huge completion to Laporta in the final minute there. They had outgained Cleveland 164-132 in the first half, and they were averaging 5.9 yards per play. So that third quarter dip in yards per play for Detroit really impacted that because, like I said earlier, they finished at 4.9. Goff was 12 of 18 passing in the first half with no turnovers, 118 yards. He had the touchdown to St. Brown that made it 17-7 in the second quarter. The Browns were at 132 yards of offense, so not too far off of Detroit's pace. But Flacco had 2 picks, and he was 10 of 15 passing for 110. So let's think about it this way. The first drive for Cleveland was 13 plays, 88 yards, and they go up 7-0. At this point, I think Detroit's given up game-opening touchdowns 3 times. Flacco's 5 of 5 passing on the drive. A couple of them were play action. He went at Reed twice. I think he went at Arnold once or twice. 70 yards passing on 5 of 5 on the opening possession. Thereafter, in the first half at least, he's 5 of 10 with 2 picks for 40 yards. Could have been picked another time. I just feel like they were floundering on offense, and I can't imagine when they'll finally consider replacing him in a game that's still in doubt. He put Dylan Gabriel in today when the game was completely over. My notes at halftime on Hutchinson said, you have to give credit to the Lions defense. Hutchinson has a sack on a possession that I actually missed. I was at my office and was interrupted. Jack Campbell had 6 tackles in the first half. 2 of them was against Njoku, the tight end, who kind of got phased out today. He's normally really good in second and long, third and long situations where they get the ball to him underneath. Jack Campbell tackled him twice real quickly. DJ Reed had 2 PDs and the interception, which was just a sick effort. Flacco throws the comeback route to Jerry Jeudy left side. It's one-on-one, right? It's a lot of man-to-man by Kelvin Shepard. And Reed makes the diving interception. I was glad that it was upheld because the way the ball touched the ground, I thought, okay, to me, that's a catch. And I think that should be a catch, but you never know with NFL replay stuff. Kirby Joseph had the earlier interception, again, on one that Flacco just kind of throws up like a fly ball in baseball. That was to cap the first quarter. Lions, so Detroit was given 10 points off turnovers. And even though it's 20-7, you get the sense that one turnover from the Lions' standpoint, and this game could be totally different. From the run game perspective, Detroit had 10 carries for 46 yards, but 24 of that came on the big run by Gibbs in the second quarter. That possession, unfortunately, ended in a punt. So really, offensively, from a run game standpoint, Detroit got nothing done in the first half. 9 carries for 22 yards if you omit that 24-yard run by Gibbs. The O-line, I thought the O-line almost stood up better in pass pro at times, even though there was moments where Goff was pressured. He wasn't sacked today. Then they blocked in the run game. It didn't seem like the offensive line was able to consistently get run lanes open. They only had 3 penalties for 15 yards. But the Browns, were occasionally able to get penetration. That's their style. That's what they play. They play downhill. Malik Collins, the defensive tackle, was really impressive in the first half. I thought he was causing a lot of problems for the left guard, Mahogany, and the center, Glasgow. He had 5 tackles, was consistently in the backfield. The 2 turnovers really loomed large, as well as the ability to get that conversion by Bates. I can just see this Lions team winning a game on a 58-yarder by Bates because he just seems so clutch. It just seems like nothing bothers him. My literal notes that I talked about was Flacco at this point is a huge liability for the Browns. It's the second time I've said that. I said the same thing after they came to Baltimore, and the Ravens defense, which is awful at this point, at least as I record this today, was able to hold him and the Browns defense down. Cleveland ran the ball 14 times for 28 yards. A lot of duo or downhill run concepts that the Lions largely stuffed. One time, Judkins was able to bounce outside and get like 10 or 12-yard gain. The injury to Joseph in the first half meant that Avonte Maddox was on. I don't know what him and Branch did. It seemed like Branch was still playing a lot of man, so maybe Avonte Maddox was playing free safety. Moving forward, that's going to be a difficult situation with Reed, Arnold, and even Kirby Joseph was injured at one point in the game. Like I said, the Lions offense being shut down in the third quarter, I don't think you can just blindly attribute that to, we're playing a vanilla style conservative, trying not to turn the football over, because then you have the interception from Goff that's on a 1st and 20. I'm not a huge fan of that play call. I really feel like they could have attacked horizontally with the run game or the pass game. Instead, today was a day that John Morton and the offensive staff, really had some things kind of served back at them. The run game was not able to consistently get going against this Cleveland defensive front. I do think that the injuries to Arnold and Reed will be a point of emphasis or something to focus on for fans and the Lions coaches as the week goes on. Go into Cincinnati next week. Obviously, I know the Bengals really well. They throw the ball a ton under normal circumstances with Burrow at quarterback. A little different now, but they've actually committed to the run game a little bit more in 2024 and 25. So we might see a more of a concerted effort to be balanced. It'll be interesting to see how the Lions, depending on who's healthy from a corner standpoint, deal with the talent that the Bengals have at their disposal in the pass game. Chase and Gibbs, as well as the tight end Gesicki, even if there's a backup at quarterback. In any case, you definitely have to talk about Kelvin Shepard's performance once again, and I'll cover that in a film study video. My first one will be about Aiden Hutchinson Monday morning, and then some type of follow-up or discussion of the punt return to illustrate it for you guys, how Khalif Raymond made it happen. I don't want to be overly negative, but I really can't co-sign that beating the Browns, who I saw come to Baltimore with a really, really subpar offense 2 weeks ago, that win to me is one to celebrate too much. The Browns have a super talented defensive line, pretty good DBs. Inside linebacker position, I feel like, is one that could have been exploited. They just really matched numbers in the run game and were able to slow down Morton's attack and his flow, his ability to call plays in a way that put Goff in as many high percentage second and third, second and fourth situations. You're welcome to have a different opinion than me. As I record this, the Ravens game against the Chiefs is just about ready to start. In any case, you guys let me know, what I missed or omitted in this reaction video that's a little bit short-circuited because I'm trying to get to a second game. And if you think other Lions fans would enjoy my reaction to their 34-10 win over the Browns, that puts them at 3-1 now, going on the road to play the Bengals next week, where they'll certainly be favored, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.